Desert Storm was over. However, the end of hostilities didn't bring the end of difficulties with Iraq. CENTCOM was faced with a new set of challenges in the region. Hundreds of thousands of people were homeless and in this need of shelter, food, and medicine. Many others, like the Kurds in northern Iraq, were still persecuted by Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, who had remained in power. In response, the United States launched Operation Provide Comfort to help mitigate the humanitarian crisis rapidly unfolding for the Kurds fleeing their homes. Tensions remained high. The United Nations condemned Hussein for his slaughter of Iraqi civilians. Coalition forces began to enforce a no-fly zone across southern Iraq. But, back in Tampa, CENTCOM had more than Iraq to worry about. The 1990s also witnessed significant challenges in the East African nation of Somalia, which then fell under CENTCOM purview. A growing threat of regional terrorism needed to be dealt with. Amidst intense clan warfare and to prevent widespread starvation, CENTCOM launched Operation Provide Relief in 1992 to deliver humanitarian assistance. Still, conditions in the Somalian capital of Mogadishu worsened, with a series of violent outbreaks. After the Battle of Mogadishu in October of 1993, which saw 19 American service members killed, President Bill Clinton ordered the withdrawal of all troops from Somalia.
The years following Operation Desert Storm saw the beginning of a shift in doctrine and tactics to be used against the new threats we now faced. What was important here is how coalition commanders who'd come of age during the Cold War learned to adapt against these smaller and unique threats. You know, this is no longer set-piece battles. You're no longer fighting large armies. Given the large sizes, the weaponry, and force structure of previous adversaries, learning how to counter these new threats represented a real change for Army leaders, a new way of thinking.
The remainder of the 1990s saw CENTCOM responding to numerous terrorist attacks in the region. The bombing of the Khobar Towers in 1996, which killed 19 American airmen, prompted increased force protection measures. When terrorists attacked the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998, and attacked the USS Cole in 2000, CENTCOM helped lay the groundwork for combating these new hybrid threats.
Unlike earlier conflicts, coalition forces had to contend with members that were not members of a recognized country. These early salvos in the war against terror showed that our enemies were willing to launch unconventional attacks against the United States and her allies.
The world changed forever in September 11, 2001. 19 militants associated with Al-Qaeda extremist group committed the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil in history. People everywhere wondered how America would respond. President George W. Bush moved quickly to mobilize the American and international response. With CENTCOM leading the charge, Operation Enduring Freedom began. CENTCOM had a clear mission: extinguish terrorist camps, stop the spread of Al-Qaeda radicalism and violence, and help ease the suffering of the Afghan population.
The 9/11 attacks on American cities shocked the world. President George W. Bush soon rallied for a response. In October of that year, the United States and its allies invaded Afghanistan. The aim of the invasion was to dismantle Al-Qaeda and to deny it a safe base of operations in Afghanistan by removing the Taliban government. The global war on terror had begun in earnest. Despite initial success in Afghanistan, American forces soon became bogged down in the east and the south. The Bush administration then turned its attention to Iraq. Believing that Iraq maintained chemical and biological weapons, the administration pushed for a war with Saddam Hussein's regime. Saddam Hussein's continued belligerence and aggressive posture led the United Nations Security Council to authorize the use of force by a U.S.-led coalition against Iraq. Operation Iraqi Freedom was launched in March 2003, and within a month, Saddam Hussein had been removed from power. Following the routing of the Taliban and the defeat of Saddam's government in Iraq, CENTCOM forces found themselves engaged in ferocious counterinsurgencies in other countries.
For years, the United States had been preparing to fight a conventional war against other superpowers or near peers. The Soviet Union was the model. So much of our doctrine, along with our weapon systems and technology, had been designed for large-scale modern warfare. Now, for the first time since Vietnam, coalition commanders were taking the battle to a smaller, lethal enemy launching counterinsurgency operations.
On August the 11th, 2003, NATO assumed leadership of ISAF, or the International Security Assistance Force. NATO was now responsible for the command, coordination, and force planning in Afghanistan. CENTCOM also continued to support disaster relief efforts throughout the region, with significant operations in response to the October 2005 earthquake in Pakistan and the evacuation of nearly 15,000 citizens from Lebanon in 2006. On October 1, 2008, the United States Department of Defense transferred responsibility for Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, and Somalia to the newly established Africa Command. Egypt, home to Exercise Bright Star, the DoD's largest recurring military exercise, remained in the U.S. CENTCOM area of responsibility. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, emerged in 2013 with its extreme ideology claiming to have created an Islamic caliphate. Its acquisition of large numbers of weapons and rapid seizure of territory in Iraq alarmed the world. By June 2014, the security situation in Iraq had deteriorated, with the Iraqi cities of Mosul and Tikrit falling to ISIS forces.
The United States had ceased active combat operations of its own in Iraq in 2011. When ISIS continued to make gains in the region and conquer territory, CENTCOM helped to ensure the new Iraqi army had what it needed to defeat that. And that had always been the intention from the start, to train, advise, and assist a trusted ally in this common fight against terrorism.
Over the next 3 years, coalition, Iraqi, and other partnered forces worked together to combat ISIS. Thousands of square kilometers of land were reclaimed, significantly weakening the ISIS terror infrastructure in Iraq and Syria. CENTCOM was also helping to write the final chapter in Afghanistan, after more than 13 years of Allied involvement. On January 1, 2015, the ISAF era ended when the command transitioned to NATO's Resolute Support mission. The new mission focused on training, advising, and assisting the Afghan government and security forces in pursuit of a strong, stable, and enduring country. CENTCOM had been defeating terror groups in Iraq and Iran since 9/11, yet evil ideology continued to loom in the Middle East.
Senator, Iran is the #1 destabilizing factor in the Middle East right now with their malign behavior.
With the recapture of practically all ISIS-held territory in Iraq and Syria by the end of 2017, CENTCOM was determined that violent extremist organizations would never again regain a footing in the region. That mission continues to the present day, as malign actors such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the Houthis in Yemen use their limited resources to foment unrest and violence. The regional instability caused by violent extremist organizations has resulted in thousands of displaced persons straining the humanitarian resources of the nations they have fled to. Radicalization of those without future prospects remains a major concern. In Syria, CENTCOM partners with the Syrian Democratic Forces against ISIS. ISIS continues to seek global presence that would allow it to generate external attacks. Unfortunately, Iran continues to provide weapons, including unmanned aerial systems, while continuing to dispense their other patronage across the region. Going forward, deterring the regional ambitions of Iran to undermine security and stability with militia groups and its proxies is paramount.
Unlike our recent campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq, we now have to contend with the full resources of a malign modern state. The full spectrum of weapons, from intercontinental ballistic missiles to cutting-edge unmanned aerial vehicles. Given the large size, the capability, the reach of Iran, effectively countering Tehran's malign intentions is likely to be CENTCOM's primary mission going forward.
By routinely threatening commerce and international waterways, refusing to negotiate in good faith on nuclear programs, and violating sanctions and embargoes, Iran will continue to occupy a large share of CENTCOM strategic planning. Other challenges have surfaced in recent years, however. With the end of large-scale CENTCOM involvement in Afghanistan in 2021, efforts to counter future regional competitors have received greater attention. The growing and enduring influence of China and Russia must be dealt with. China continues its Belt and Road Initiative in the region, aiming to spread influence with infrastructure projects at favorable economic terms for the recipients, but with long-term strategic detriments. CENTCOM will need to assure our partners that we'll still be around in the future, not just as a defense partner, but also an economic one. And Russia has arms and security agreements in various countries in the region, notably Syria. Their basing of forces and a naval presence there present unique challenges, and they frequently employ private military companies for special missions. CENTCOM must continue to showcase the benefit of partnership, all of which highlight continued U.S. commitment and resolve to the region.
China and Russia aren't going away, and strategic competition in the Middle East, in the Levant, in Central Asia is not going away. China and Russia, they're going to continue to push for influence. They're going to continue to project power. We've got to show our partners, our present partners and our future partners, that CENTCOM represents a better way. Meanwhile, we have to show the country, the United States, that CENTCOM matters.
The biggest challenge going forward, however, is adapting to future battlefields and the changing manner of warfare. If CENTCOM can harness innovation, it has the potential to enhance leverage of our systems, concepts, and presence in our area of responsibility. Those future battlefields will feature artificial intelligence, drone and hypersonic glide vehicles, and cruise missiles.
We are developing a culture of innovation across all of CENTCOM. When we think about a culture of innovation, it isn't just a new piece of kit. It isn't just new technology. It isn't just artificial intelligence. Yes, it's all of those things, but it's also about new ideas coming in. It's about unlocking ideas all across the organization. It's about new processes, thinking of new ways of organizing for combat, thinking about new ways of doing anything. It's about finding inefficiencies in our daily life and service and then solving for those inefficiencies. That is innovation, and we're going to have to innovate in order to win.
CENTCOM will remain committed to overlapping and mutually reinforcing military, economic, and political agreements. Any future military operations will require regional partners that value the continued partnership and mutual benefits that CENTCOM can provide. CENTCOM must remain a valuable component of the whole-of-government approach needed to help bring lasting peace and stability to the region. With an effective military deterrent supporting the diplomatic, economic, maximum pressure campaign against malign actors, CENTCOM will showcase its relevance well into the future.